Before we start the notes on 8.1, our vocabulary for the lesson, we have solution, and that's the value for the variable that makes an equation true. So in our example, we have 3/4 x is equal to 72, and 96 would be the solution for the x value. Multiplication property of equality. If you multiply each side of an equation by the same non-zero number, the two sides remain equal. So for any number, a, b, and c, if a is equal to b, then ca is equal to cb. So in the example, we're just multiplying both sides by c, which would be the same number. The division property of equality states that if you divide each side of an equation by the same non-zero number, the two sides remain equal. So my example is for any numbers a, b, and c, where c, your denominator, can't be 0, if a is equal to b, then a divided by c is equal to b divided by c. So if we have a over b and we divide both sides by the same number, c, we get the same answer. Inverse operations are operations that are opposites. They can undo each other, like addition and subtraction. Or, in the example I have here, we can undo each other with multiplication or division. So we have 4.2x is equal to negative 52.5. Well, to get the variable by itself, we can divide both sides by 4.2. That's its inverse operation. The second example, I have 1/4 y is equal to negative 8. So I can multiply both sides by 4 to undo the multiplying by a fraction. So we're multiplying by the reciprocal. Equivalent equations are equations that have the same solution. So x plus 1 is equal to 5, and x plus 3 is equal to 7, because our x is equal to 4 in both equations. The essential question to go along with the chapter is how are equations and inequalities used to describe and solve multi-step problems. Our notes on 8.1 is called Solving Equations with Rational Coefficients. That means our number attached to the variable is a rational number. So it's any number that can be written as a fraction, which includes your set of integers, natural numbers, and whole numbers. So we're going to solve equations by using the division property of equality. We're going to solve equations by using the multiplication property of equality. The Common Core state standards are listed in the mathematical practices. So here's the steps to follow. The first thing you're going to do is identify the variable by circling it. That's optional. It is helpful in the beginning to do that, but then eventually you will probably fizzle out doing that. 2, to get the variable by itself, you're going to multiply or divide each side of the equation by the same non-zero number. Then you're going to check your solution. So our first section is solving equations by dividing. Solve the following equations algebraically by showing all steps. So we're not doing these mentally, we're showing all our steps. So number 1 says negative 2a is equal to 14. We want to find out what a is. The negative 2 touching the a means multiplication. So to do undo multiplication, you're going to divide by the number that's attached to the a, the same number. So that would be negative 2. Divide a negative 2 by negative 2, and that cancels out to 1. So we are left with a variable all by itself, which is a, or 1a. 14 divided by negative 2 gives you negative 7. So a is equal to negative 7. To check your answers, it's negative 2 times your a, which is negative 7, to give you 14. Well, a negative 2 times a negative 7 is 14. So both sides check out. In number 2, we have decimals. So you're allowed to use a calculator. We want to find out what the a is. So it's attached by multiplication, so we're going to divide both sides by 5.6. 5.6 divided by 5.6 is 1. So we're left with 1a, or a. Now we can figure out if it's negative or positive because we have 1 negative divided by a positive, so our answer is negative. Now we can use our calculator. 19.6 divided by 5.6 to give you 3.5, or a negative 3.5. We can check your work. So it would be 5.6 times a negative 3.5, and we want to get a negative 19.6. Using your calculator again, 5.6 times 3.5, which is negative, equals negative 19.6, so our solution is correct. Number 3, negative 9/10 x divided by 7 2/10. We need to find out what x is. So it's multiplication, so we're going to divide by negative 9/10 on both sides. On the left-hand side, negative 9/10 cancels out, so we're left with x equals. We have a negative divided by a negative, which is positive, and using your calculator, if we put in 7.2 divided by 0.9, we end up with 8. Number 4, 6x minus 2x equals negative 12. The first thing that we have to do here is combine like terms because we have two x's. So 6x minus 2x gives you 4x is equal to negative 12. There's a 4 attached to our x, so we're going to divide both sides by 4. And you're left with x is equal to negative 3. Section 2 is solving equations by multiplying. So solve the following equations. We have m divided by 2 is equal to negative 15. The fraction bar tells us to divide. Our inverse operation is to multiply. We're going to multiply both sides of the equation by 2. On the left-hand side, we can put the 2 over 1. So we're canceling the 2 in the numerator and the 2 in the denominator, so we're left with our m. On the right side, it's negative 15 times 2, or negative 30. We can also mentally check these by saying if I have negative 30 and I divide it by a positive 2, do you end up with negative 15? And it is true, so m equals negative 30 is our solution. Number 2 says negative half x equals a negative 5. Well, we want to get our x by itself. We want to end up with a 1x. And if we have negative a half, we need to multiply by its reciprocal. Negative 2 over 1 on both sides. Negative 2 over 1. Now we can cross cancel. Our 2's cancel out. Our 1's cancel out. 2 negatives makes a positive, so we're left with x equals. And a negative 5 times a negative 2 is a positive 10. So our answer is x is equal to 10. So remember, if you have a fraction, you want to multiply by its multiplicative inverse, or its reciprocal. Number 3 is 6/7 m is equal to negative 2/7. We have a fraction again. So we need to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the fraction attached to m, which is 7 over 6. The 6's cancel, the 7's cancel, so we're left with m. On the right-hand side, it's a negative times a positive, which is negative. We can cross-cancel the 7's, and 2 becomes a 1, and the 6 becomes a 3, so we're left with negative 1/3. Number 4, again, we have a fraction in front of the variable, so it's negative 3/5 y is equal to negative 6/25. So we're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal, so that's negative 5/3 on both sides. On the left-hand side, everything cross-cancels, so you're left with y equals. And now we can cross-cancel the 5 with the 25, so you're left with 1 and 5. The 6 with the 3, so you're left with 1 and 2. So we have 2 negatives, so our answer is positive. So our answer is y is equal to 2/5. Last example, problem solving. So it says a drive-through Safari Zoo charges $12.50 per person for admission. In 1 hour, the park raised $675 in admission fees. Write and solve an equation to find how many people visited that hour. So we can translate the first part. It's $12.50 per person. Per means multiplication. So $12.50 P is equal to, and that would be how much they raised in that 1 hour. Divide both sides by $12.50. On the left-hand side, everything cancels out, and you're left with P equals, which P represents the people, 675 divided by 12.5 gives us 54. So that means 54 people entered the zoo in that hour.